After signing the divorce papers with my husband in silence, I immediately blocked all his financial access, including his debit and credit cards. One night, while he was celebrating a lavish $350,000 wedding with his mistress, the music suddenly stopped. In an instant, the ballroom fell silent, and that was when I appeared with a mysterious man. A single sentence from that man would destroy everything in an instant. The air in the mediation room of the Atlanta family court was exceptionally cold and tense, perhaps because the air conditioning was running at twice its usual power. On one side of the long, polished mahogany table sat a man dressed in a bespoke suit, radiating an air of unearned confidence. That was Thayer. A victorious expression sat on his face, one he didn't even bother to hide. Leaning back in the plush leather chair, he looked with utter disdain at the woman sitting across from him. That woman was Lysandra, his wife, or rather, his soon-to-be ex-wife. Lysandra sat in silence, her hands neatly crossed over her knees on top of her simple, tailored dress. Her style, understated but undeniably high-end, framed an expressionless face. There were no tears, no flashes of anger, only a deep-seated calm that made it impossible for anyone to guess what she was thinking. Thayer's lawyer slid a thick stack of documents toward Lysandra. The sound of the paper scraping against the wood echoed unnaturally loud in the quiet room. Thayer, with a sarcastic smirk, began to speak, intentionally raising his voice so that everyone in the room could hear just how powerful he thought he was. He told her that deciding to divorce him was the greatest mistake of her life. He went on to say that she wouldn't survive in a city like Atlanta without him. He described her as a simple housewife who had lived a comfortable life only because of his hard work as the CEO of the company. According to Thayer, Lysandra had no skills other than spending the money he earned. The words, filled with insults and overflowing arrogance, poured out of his mouth without restraint. Lysandra didn't interrupt him. She let him empty everything he had on his mind. Inwardly, she marveled at how money and status could transform the man she once loved into such a despicable stranger. She remembered perfectly how Thayer had approached her years ago, how politely he had asked for her parents' blessing, parents who, at the time, were very skeptical of him. But now, Thayer acted as if the entire world was at his feet. Lysandra's lawyer tried to stop the torrent of words coming from Thayer, but she held him back with a gentle wave of her hand. She wanted to hear it all. She wanted to burn this moment into her memory as a powerful reason never to look back. When Thayer finished his triumphant speech, he slid his expensive gold fountain pen toward her, challenging her to sign the papers if she truly had the courage to live a difficult life. He added that he had no intention of giving her a single cent in the division of assets, and that he was sure she would come crawling back in less than a month, begging for grocery money. Lysandra took the pen slowly. She glanced at the clauses in the document. Everything was going according to her plan. No property claims, no demands for shares. A pure, unconditional divorce. To Thayer, this was an absolute victory. He felt he could now dominate all the assets he had been managing. To Lysandra, this was the key that opened the door to the trap she had meticulously set. The tip of the pen touched the white paper. With a firm, unwavering hand, Lysandra signed her name. The black ink put an end to their 5 years of marriage. The scratch of the pen sounded decisive, as if announcing that there wasn't a single shred of doubt left in her mind. After signing, she closed the document and pushed it back toward Thayer's lawyer. The mediator, who had been watching the scene, could only sigh deeply, seeing the stubbornness of both parties in their own ways. Thayer grabbed the papers immediately, verified the signature with a wide grin, and let out a short laugh. He felt as if a massive weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He felt free. Free to have an open relationship with Vesper, free to enjoy the wealth that he believed was the fruit of his own sweat. Lysandra stood up, straightened her clothes briefly, and took one last look at Thayer, who was already busy shaking his lawyer's hand, celebrating his false victory. Without saying a word to him, Lysandra turned and headed for the exit. Her steps were light, as if thousands of tons had just been lifted off her back. From behind her, Thayer shouted that she shouldn't forget her way out, as he wouldn't be giving her a ride. Lysandra didn't turn around. She opened the door to the mediation room, walked through the busy corridors of the courthouse, and reached the main lobby where a car was waiting for her. Outside the building, the Georgia sun was shining brightly, a stark contrast to the cold treatment she had just received from Thayer. Lysandra climbed into a comfortable black sedan. She sat in the back seat and let out a long breath. Her personal driver, an older man who had served her family loyally for decades, asked politely if everything had gone well. Lysandra simply nodded in silence with a slight smile. She pulled a tablet from her briefcase. When the screen lit up, the logo of a prestigious private bank appeared, the bank where all her family's and the company's assets were held. Lysandra entered a double security code and scanned her fingerprint to log into the system as the primary administrator. On the screen, the financial diagram she had been quietly monitoring appeared clearly. She could see the personal accounts linked to various company accounts. For the past 5 years, Thayer had held a secondary access card with an almost unlimited limit. He thought it was his personal account, but it was nothing more than a facility provided by Lysandra's family to make it easier for their son-in-law to manage the company. Thayer had forgotten, or perhaps he was too arrogant to realize, that he had never been the primary account holder. All the assets, from the mansion they lived in to the cars in the garage and the platinum credit card he often bragged about, were linked to Lysandra's family estate account. Lysandra's finger slid across the tablet screen. She entered the user access settings menu. There was Thayer's name with the title of CEO and full access status. Lysandra pressed the Modify button without the slightest hesitation and changed his access status. She selected the options to block all additional credit cards, freeze cash withdrawal access, and delink the digital token for company transfers. The system asked for a final confirmation with a warning that this action would paralyze all financial activity for the user. Lysandra firmly pressed the confirmation button. The screen processed the order for a few seconds, showing a spinning circle, and then displayed a large green check mark with the phrase, "Access permissions successfully revoked." Lysandra leaned back in the soft car seat. She closed her eyes for a moment, imagining what would happen next. Thayer would be on his way to his freedom now, probably planning a massive party to celebrate this divorce. Lysandra knew her ex-husband well. He was the type of person who craved validation. He would undoubtedly flaunt his wealth to cover up the fact that he had just failed in his family life. "Goodbye to a painful past," Lysandra whispered to herself. She was no longer the silent wife at home. She was the rightful owner of the business empire that Thayer had been claiming as his own. The sedan wove through the city traffic, taking Lysandra away from the courthouse. In the silence of the car, she opened the messaging app on her phone. There was a message from Mr. Zephaniah, a distant relative and a trusted advisor to her late father, who had been helping her oversee the company from the shadows. The message was brief, asking if Phase 1 was complete. Lysandra typed a quick reply, confirming that the divorce papers were signed and the financial access was completely cut. She also added instructions for Mr. Zephaniah to prepare the next phase. The game had just begun, and this time, Lysandra had total control of the chessboard. Thayer walked out of the courthouse with a triumphant stride. He felt like a bird newly released from its cage. He immediately pulled out his smartphone and called the number he had contacted most lately. The name Vesper appeared on the screen. As soon as the call connected, Vesper's honeyed voice greeted him. Thayer proudly announced that he was officially a golden bachelor. He told Vesper that Lysandra hadn't demanded anything, which meant that the entire company fortune and his personal assets were now safe in his hands. Vesper squealed with joy on the other end, praising Thayer's brilliance in the negotiation. In reality, he had no idea he was walking into a trap. Without wasting any time, Thayer suggested meeting Vesper to celebrate this historic day. They agreed to plan their wedding as soon as possible. Thayer wanted to prove to the world, and especially to Lysandra's family, that he could be happy and successful without his ex-wife's shadow. He went to pick up Vesper in his luxury company car. She was waiting for him, perfectly dressed and ready to spend Thayer's money. Their destination that day was the most prestigious five-star hotel in downtown Atlanta, a place frequented by moguls and high-ranking officials for their luxury weddings. Upon arriving at the hotel, the reception staff greeted them warmly. Thayer, with his usual arrogance, asked to speak directly with the banquet marketing manager. He said he wanted to book the most expensive wedding package available for the earliest possible date. The hotel manager, a professional-looking middle-aged man, received them in his elegant office. He presented a catalog of high-end wedding packages. Vesper's eyes sparkled instantly when she saw photos of decorations filled with imported flowers and crystal chandeliers. Without hesitation, she pointed to the royal wedding package with a price tag of $350,000. And that was just for the space rental and basic catering, not including the additional decorations she wanted. Thayer, wanting to impress his future wife, accepted Vesper's choice without haggling. He even made special requests for a premium menu and first-class service. The hotel manager smiled broadly as he calculated the total cost. He explained that to confirm the date and begin the urgent preparations, a minimum deposit of 50% was required, though full payment in advance was better to ensure priority. With a nonchalant air, Thayer pulled out his leather wallet and extracted the black credit card that was the symbol of his social status. He dropped it onto the marble table with a confident clack. The hotel manager took the card politely and inserted it into the terminal on his desk. Thayer smiled at Vesper, imagining how grand their party would be. But that smile slowly faded when the hotel manager frowned. The terminal emitted a long beep and spat out a small receipt with the word declined. The manager tried to run the card again, thinking there might be an issue with the magnetic strip or an unstable internet connection, but the result was the same. The terminal rejected the transaction. Thayer began to feel uncomfortable. He laughed awkwardly, saying that perhaps he had used the card too frequently and the chip was dirty or damaged. He pulled another credit card from his wallet, this time a platinum card from a different bank. He handed it to the manager, slightly nervous but trying to appear calm. The manager tried to process the transaction again. The seconds spent waiting for approval felt like hours to Thayer, and once again, the terminal rejected it. Thayer's face began to turn red with embarrassment. Vesper looked at him strangely. Her smile had disappeared, replaced by unease. Thayer rushed to provide an excuse, saying there must be a massive failure in the banking system, or some system, maintenance, blocking all transactions. To save face, he finally pulled out the company checkbook he always carried in his briefcase. He knew that using company money directly for personal purposes carried a small risk, but as the CEO, he figured he could fix it later with the finance team. With a slightly trembling hand, he wrote a check for $350,000 and signed it. He handed it to the hotel manager, saying in a firm tone that this check would surely clear since it was from a major corporation's account. The hotel manager took the check, examined it for a moment, and nodded. He said he would process it immediately with the payment department, but since Thayer was a VIP client, the venue reservation could be considered confirmed for now. Thayer breathed a sigh of relief. He had overcome a small crisis. After the hotel, Vesper dragged Thayer directly to jewelry stores and bridal boutiques. Her desire for shopping was insatiable. She chose a massive diamond ring and a gown by a famous designer. When trying to pay for the ring, a transaction that cost far less than the venue rental, Thayer tried to use his personal debit card, but again, the transaction failed. The clerk at the boutique looked at him with pity. Thayer truly started to panic. He tried to open the mobile banking app on his phone to make a transfer, but the app was inaccessible, showing a notification. Your account has been temporarily frozen. Please contact your branch. A cold sweat began to run down his temples. He made an excuse to Vesper, saying his phone must have a virus or had been hacked, causing an error in the bank app for security reasons. Vesper began to show irritation and suspicion. But Thayer managed to convince her with sweet promises that tomorrow morning, after resolving all these technical issues at the bank, he would let her buy whatever she wanted. Today, Thayer had no choice but to take Vesper home empty-handed, except for the promise of the lavish party they had just booked. In the car, Thayer called his mother, hoping he could borrow some temporary cash. But his hopes were shattered by his mother's angry voice on the other end. She had already heard about Thayer and Lysandra's divorce from other relatives. Thayer's mother scolded him harshly for divorcing Lysandra, whom she had always considered a good daughter-in-law from a prestigious family. She refused to lend him money and told Thayer to solve his own problems like an adult. Frustrated, Thayer threw his phone onto the car seat. He felt as if the world was conspiring against him that day. He didn't realize that it wasn't a cosmic conspiracy, but the cold execution of Lysandra's plan. Meanwhile, back in the hotel manager's office, the man made a call after Thayer and Vesper left. With a respectful tone, he spoke. On the other end of the line was Lysandra's personal assistant. The hotel manager reported that Thayer had just given a company check to pay for the party. Lysandra's assistant gave specific instructions. Let the party preparations go ahead, accept the check, but do not cash it until the day of the event, to give Thayer a false sense of security. Lysandra wanted Thayer to sink deeper into the trap of debt and shame. The hotel manager understood and hung up. The party would be held as planned, but not as a celebration of love, rather as the stage for the ruin of Thayer's arrogance. The morning after the dramatic day at the hotel, Thayer woke up with a knot in his stomach. The sun was peeking through the curtains of the luxury apartment he had just rented last month to live temporarily with Vesper. His head felt heavy, not from lack of sleep, but from the worry that his credit cards had suddenly stopped working the day before. He sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed his face roughly. He tried to convince himself that it was just a temporary glitch in the banking system. He was the CEO of a major company. It was impossible for a bank to block his access without warning. Thayer grabbed his phone from the nightstand, hoping to see a message from the bank explaining the error, but there were no banking notifications on the screen. Instead, there was a message from Vesper, who had woken up earlier and said she was waiting for him in the lobby. She was anxious to continue with her wedding shopping agenda. Thayer showered and got ready in a hurry. He put on his best shirt and his brand-name watch to shore up his confidence, which was starting to waver. Going down to the lobby, he saw Vesper sitting comfortably, flipping through a fashion magazine. Vesper's face lit up when she saw Thayer. She immediately stood up and clung to his arm flirtatiously, reminding him of the long list of things they had to buy today. Vesper wanted to order designer shoes from overseas, a limited edition leather bag, and specially imported wedding favors. Thayer smiled bitterly and nodded to all her requests, while his mind calculated how he was going to pay for it all if his cards were still blocked. He decided to try his luck once more today, hoping the banking system had returned to normal. Their first destination was a luxury bag and shoe boutique in the most exclusive mall in Buckhead. Vesper walked into the store like a queen inspecting her kingdom. The clerks, experts in dealing with wealthy clients, greeted them immediately with kindness, offering them cold drinks and appetizers. Vesper, without hesitation, pointed out 3 bags, each priced like a new motorcycle. She also tried on several pairs of heels with crystal incrustations. Thayer could only sit on the waiting sofa, his heart beating fast every time Vesper said, "I'll take this." The total for Vesper's shopping that morning amounted to hundreds of thousands of dollars in less than an hour. When Vesper signaled a clerk to take all the items to the register, Thayer felt a cold sweat run down his back. Reaching the counter, he pulled out his wallet in slow motion. He took out a platinum credit card different from the one he had used at the hotel the day before, hoping this one from another bank wouldn't have problems. The clerk inserted the card into the terminal. Thayer held his breath, his eyes fixed on the small machine's screen. The seconds passed very slowly. Then a painful, short beep was heard. The clerk looked at Thayer politely, but with a glint of suspicion in his eyes. He informed him that the transaction had been declined due to a security code. Thayer forced a laugh to hide his embarrassment. He made an excuse out loud so that Vesper and the other customers could hear, saying that his bank, for the security of premium clients like him, had probably restricted high-value transactions upon detecting suspicious activity. Vesper began to get irritated. She looked at him with an inquisitive gaze, as if asking what the point of being a CEO's wife was if they couldn't even go shopping. Not wanting to lose face in front of his future wife and the clerks, Thayer finally asked for the store's account number. He promised he would have his finance staff at the office make a direct transfer from the company account that same day. The store clerk seemed to hesitate, as their usual procedure was full payment on the spot for items